Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I'm Jeremy,
I'm Alan.
and you are officially tuned in to the GG Dispatch each week on Tuesday, bright and early. We consolidate the week's biggest headlines and gaming news. Whether you're listening on your commute, during your workout, or you just have us on in the background, we want to thank you for listening in. And speaking of thanks, another kind thank you to the folks at Audio Technica for providing the microphone that Alan uses, the AT2020 USB X. Whether you're just starting out on your content creator journey or you're a seasoned pro, Audio Technica has the products for you. We've got something pretty special for you today, gang. Our first installment of GG Dispatch's Indie Spotlight. I had the pleasure of speaking with Tomas Pereyra, who is currently working on Soulquest, a 2D hack and slash game coming to Kickstarter in September. Take a listen as he discusses his inspirations for the game as well as unique challenges. So, we have something pretty special today. This is going to be the first of hopefully many conversations that we have with indie creators. And our first spotlight is on Tomas Pereyra and Soul Quest. So, Tomas, first of all, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing perfect.
Awesome. So, love to hear from you, Tomas. Tell us a little bit about Soulquest. What is this game, and what your elevator pitch? Like, what's the drive? What's the hook for the game that you're making?
Soulquest is a 2D hack and slash, a pixel art game inspired mostly by the Celtic mythology and the Arthurian tales. I designed it mostly to be, the perfect interpretation of a Devil May Cry if it will be in a 2D space. I try to make it the perfect hack and slash in two dimensions that I can pull off.
That's awesome. A Devil May Cry in 2D. That's a hard sell for me. That's good. I think that's a great hook. Um, so, how long have you been working on this game?
I'm start kind of like 5 years now. I started half in 2019, but it wasn't like a continuous development. I have a full-time job,
Mm,
and so I never worked full-time on the game. I also dedicate almost all of the past year working on another game. So it wasn't 5 years of full working on the game.
hmm
That was mostly in 2020, and now I'm full full trying to make the Kickstarter work and being able to quit my job and dedicate it full into software development.
Awesome, awesome. Um, So you mentioned Devil May Cry as kind of like an inspiration for the game. What were some other titles that maybe as you played through them, or either aesthetically, combat wise, that you borrowed from or were inspired by in making Soul Quest?
The gameplay mostly Devil May Cry. I mean, I play a little bit of Icy, Bernal Edge, some other 2D games that try to adapt the hack and slash formula into a 2D game. But mostly I'm basing all of the gameplay and the decisions based on Devil May Cry. It's a linear game divided by missions. You have a style system for everything you do. And for visual reference, I like Flim, Son of Crimson.
Mm.
I like the aesthetic of that game, and also well, a lot of pixel art games. Boy.
What was that one?
Boy is a pixel art game that has a very detailed pixel art that's
Mm.
amazing. Iconoclast also. I think I really like pixel art games, so I have a lot of games that come to my mind and inspire me for the aesthetics of the game.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm familiar with Iconoclast. The pixel art in that game is definitely next level. I enjoyed playing that game quite a bit. Um, so yeah, when it when it came to the development of the game, what was something maybe that was unexpectedly challenging? Like, what was something that you thought, and I mean, no element of making a game is easy, right? It's all very difficult. But was there a certain part of the game that you were like, okay, I this shouldn't be too difficult, and then when it actually came time for you to work on that thing, it was like way harder than you were expecting?
Yeah, I think the thing that was the most difficult was I've been working with pixel artist for the mostly for the main character art and for the enemies. Then I think it was the ending of 2021. He left to work on another game, and then I tried to continue developing the game on my own, trying to prototype a little bit with some rough art, and it's pretty difficult trying to do that in a hack and slash genre that is defined by how you feel playing. And I think when he left, I couldn't find another artist for the same price. I couldn't afford a more expensive one, and it left me with a sensation of, oh, I can continue working at adding new games or adding a boss because I can know I don't know how it would feel in the actual boss fight without that rough art.
So were you able to get someone new then, or was it about you kind of like leveling up your own skills to be able to make up for that like gap in talent or gap in skill?
Uh, I try to develop other things about the game. The story, the dialogues.
Mhm,
Trying to tackle a little bit of game design and level design. But the artist and new content was pretty much paused since then, and that is what I'm mostly trying to do with the Kickstarter.
mm,
Having the funds to being able to hire a pixel art team
mm.
to to start working full time on the game and being able to deliver a full game with the quality of the animations that are already on the demo,
Mhm.
and having the game feel 10 times better that is on the current demo.
So you have the Kickstarter coming up. When are you planning on formally launching the Kickstarter?
September 24th.
September 24th. Okay. So we got a few weeks, about a month. And do you know, I mean, obviously it will depend, right, on the success of the Kickstarter, but how long are you hoping SoulQuest ends up being? How long do you expect the game to be, you know, wi- in your mind, like in your, maybe ideal version of the game? How long do you think the playtime would be?
You mean the playtime?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I'm trying to achieve at least in the first playthrough between 6 and 8 hours, depending on how you play and how many secrets are you planning to trying to discover.
Right.
But it's mostly this genre of game is mostly about replayability. Playing
Hmm.
in unlocking new difficulties and trying to replay the game or trying to achieve the highest score in every mission. Also, I'm trying to have an 100 level arena like in the Bloody Palace in Devil May Cry. So I'm trying to achieve that playtime for the first playthrough, but I'm trying to have the game being able to be played for a much longer time.
So Kickstarter comes out next month. You've got a pretty active Twitter as well. Go ahead and let people know where they can find you on social media, and yeah, just so that they know where to go and follow you to keep an eye on SoulQuest.
Yeah, I'm Tomas J. Pereyra on Twitter or X. I'm mostly active there, but
Mm.
we have the Discord server for Soulquest and the Kickstarter page up for following, to be able to receive updates when the campaign is going live. I think mostly I'm on those sites. I have an Instagram and a TikTok for the mostly for my studio, Soulblade Studio, but it's not as active as my Twitter.
Okay, awesome. You mentioned briefly as well that you were working on another game for about a year or so. Like, is that game coming out anywhere, anytime, or was that just sort of like a side project that you were working on?
No, it has already released last year.
Which game was
It's
that?
it's called Boy Survivors.
Okay,
It's a
Boys Rebels.
mix between Vampire Survivors and with a twin stick shooting type of gameplay
Okay.
that I made last year, mostly to have a little bit more of portfolio to being able to have a better chance with a publisher. It's better if you have a game already published and with
Mhm.
some good reviews. So mostly that was my goal with that game.
That's cool. I mean, I think that's really important as well, right? Because in the game developing space, it's all about putting stuff out there, right? Like showing that you can do the damn thing, like they say. So putting out a smaller game that again, no video game is easy to make, but maybe a smaller frame, smaller context game that's a bit easier to bring to market so that you can say, yeah, I brought this game to market, people liked it and had fun with it, and now I want to expand, level up, and do something a bit more ambitious with Soulquest, which it definitely sounds like it is going to be. I mean, again, it caught my eye on Twitter. I think the animations look really great. I think that sort of short action oriented 2D, pixelated title is a great pick up and play. So fingers crossed that the Kickstarter campaign goes well for you, Tomas. And thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me today. Of
Thank you for inviting me. It was
course.
a really good experience talking here with you.
Awesome. Have a great one, Tomas. Appreciate it. Again, it was great to connect with Tomas. Keep an eye out for Soul Quest on Kickstarter next month, and you can find the demo on Steam. I know I'm planning on giving it a spin as soon as this episode is over. It looks super cool. Really dig the animations of it. I think they're doing a great job with their social media presence and everything. So it'll be a good time. Alan, how are you? How's the weekend? How are things going?
I'm doing awesome. The weekend, I had a lot of fun because I finally got the chance to play Moving Out 2 with a friend of mine. So initially, we wanted to play Moving Out like the original release together, but
Uh-huh.
it doesn't have any online co-op. Like you just as local co-op only. So there's
Oh,
not something we
boo.
can really do. But now that Moving Out 2 came out, they did add that feature, thankfully. And it's on Game Pass. So it's like, okay, yeah, let's go do that. And it was a blast. It feels very much chaotic in the same way as Overcooked, but different in that you don't want to kill your teammate if they're like tripping you up. Instead, it's funny. It's all good vibes. 'Cause I know Overcooked can definitely bring out like the knives, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, literally. Like if you're not on shopping duty, or if you leave your station and you haven't been told to, oh man, I'm coming for you. That's that's serious business. Um, and it's from the same company, right? That's the whole deal. Team 17 did this one.
Yes, Team 17 worked on it, and
Nice.
it shows. Like it's pretty polished. We didn't run into any issues. The connecting online was easy. And again, it was just a lot of fun. So and then we played for like I think 2 hours, but it feels like we've only beaten maybe like 20% of the game. So there's a lot there, and I
Oh,
do
nice.
feel like they've added different elements that weren't there in the original one. Like one of the things is like instead of moving out, you actually got to move people in. So like instead of
Mm,
being little chaos monsters and just throwing furniture out the window and chucking stuff into the truck, like you got to be mindful of where you're placing things, making sure that whatever you're putting down isn't going to block the next thing that you got to bring in.
mm,
Another sort of new thing is like you're having to corral animals, which adds like another layer of chaos because like in one of the challenges you're doing, we're moving around livestock, and it's a whole variety. So there's chickens, there's sheep, there's cows, and there's rams. So like the
oh my
rams will
gosh.
like try to smack you as you're trying to like move the other animals. So it's a lot of fun. If you're on Game Pass and you're looking for something to play with friends or family, I can strongly recommend that. You can have a lot of fun with that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love those kind of like chaotic co-op games. my wife and I had a great time with Overcooked, and we've also played with friends as well. We've had a full kitchen, 4 chefs in Overcooked before, and that was wild. And I've seen plenty of clips for Moving Out, but I actually haven't played it yet. So thanks for the endorsement. I think we'll give it a try. And yeah, I am. I have my Xbox now, so maybe we'll need to play some Moving Out and see how that goes. Um, and then, uh, I mean, and on my end, let's see, what have I been up to this weekend? I did a lot of reading of comics this weekend. Actually, I didn't really do a ton of gaming. I
Yeah, I saw you
uh,
on the Twitter account. Like you were posting a lot of comic book stuff this weekend.
yeah, I was going through my comics. So I used to have a pretty extensive collection. Last year, well, really starting in 2020, during COVID, during the lockdown and everything, my buddy and I got into like buying and selling comic collections, and then using the funds from selling those comic collections to like build out our own like personal comic collections. And so, I'm huge on Silver Surfer, huge on Doctor Strange, huge on Mega Man, the Archie Mega Man run. Big fan of that. And so for a while, I had a pretty decent sized collection, like a 1,000 to 1,200 books. And then, bought a home in San Diego and sold a lot of it to help to pay for things around the house. And so, my collection went from like, 1,200 books to like 200 to 300. And so, over the weekend, I was just kind of, auditing my collection, doing some curation, taking some pictures, and kind of sharing my thoughts on the series that I did have left, with folks on Twitter. So if you're a comic fan, check out my Twitter from this past weekend. There's some things I call out there. So yeah, spent some time doing that. Read Gao Tanabe's adaptation of In the Mountains of Madness. It's a beautiful manga edition of that story of Lovecraft's classic tale. Um, and yeah, had a blast reading that on Saturday. And other than that, gaming wise, I just have been playing Fields of Mystria, really. Playing a lot of Fields of Mystria, still having a great time with it. It's an awesome sort of cozy retreat. And honestly, booking a ton of appointments for PAX West. So we're just shy of a week away from PAX West landing, and we have got literally like 40 plus appointments for games to check out there
That's
so
insane.
far. Yeah, and thankfully, it's me, it's Sam Khan from the Geekly Grind as well, and Elliot. So the three of us are going out there to try and see as much as we can see, but it requires a lot of planning ahead of time. So yeah, I'm excited to dig into PAX and see what kind of awesome indie games are out there. And hopefully find some more folks to come on and chat about their games, much like Tomas did earlier in this episode. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. All right, well, enough about that. Let's go ahead and dive into our stories for today. We've got 4 stories, starting with Switch 2 isn't going to release before April 2025. This is by Ethan Gash at Kotaku. The subtitle reads, "The wait for Nintendo's next console is dragging on." The question on everyone's lips right now is Switch 2 when? Now in its 8th year, the current handheld hybrid is more than a little long in the tooth, and the evidence continues to mount that fans still have a bit of a wait to go before Nintendo launches its next console. No developer I've spoken to expects it to be launching this financial year, head of GameIndustry.biz Christopher Dring said on the latest episode of GI Microcast. In fact, they told me not to expect it in the current financial year. A bunch of people I spoke to hope it's out in April or May time, still early next year, not late. That's consistent with previous reporting that while Nintendo had at one point planned to release the Switch 2 in 2024, it ultimately decided to delay the new hardware to 2025. Nintendo also hadn't included new hardware in its forecast for the current fiscal year, though the company said that wasn't necessarily an indication of its future plans, which are always changing. Dring's reporting is also the latest indication that a Switch 2 might slip behind the original hardware's release strategy. The first Switch was revealed in September 2016 and launched in March of the following year. Fans have been hoping that the customary Nintendo Direct in September, which hasn't yet been officially announced, would be when the company first shares a glimpse of its next console. But if a Switch 2 isn't coming until April or beyond, it's always possible that the company waits until 2025 to spill the beans, especially as it doubles down plans to sell another 10 million units of the existing handheld hybrid heading into the holiday season and beyond. The Switch is already the longest Nintendo has ever gone between consoles in its history. It's sounding more and more like fans will still be playing their Switch when it reaches the ninth year as well. Craziness. I mean, what are you thinking about this, Alan? I know that we had talked about this before. Switch being pushed out to 2025. Uh, I'm not. I mean, I was a doubter. I was hoping it would come holiday 2024. But yeah, what's your take on the news?
So I can't remember how long ago it was. We because we've spoken about the Switch 2 many times because it's always in the news. People always want to know about it.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
mentioned to you that old tingle from the Legend of Zelda came to me and gave me some tingles about when to expect the Switch 2. And I told you, I was like, there's no way it's coming out in 2024. And I think it'll be fall 2025. Like they're seeding the ground
No,
right now
no,
for don't expect this for a while, okay?
no.
Yes. If
I
you go back and read
refuse.
that
I
statement,
reject your reality. I reject this reality. Waiting until fall 2025 is madness. Madness.
but it makes
That's
perfect sense in Nintendo world. Like, okay, tinfoil hats on, everybody, okay? Tinfoil hats on.
all right.
I think
Adjusted.
that they're doing this a for timing, specifically in building up a supply of Switch 2s because they've been very vocal about like not wanting to let scalpers kind of rain on their parade of the Switch 2. And we've seen that they're very comfortable in producing these and just sitting on them. Like I don't know if you remember, but for the Tears of the Kingdom Switch like special edition with like the colors and everything, they sat on those
Right.
for a year. Like they had them ready to go for 1 year before officially like unveiling it and releasing it. So I could see them saying, "Let's stock up so that when, cuz like the amount of anticipation is insane for the Switch 2. Like they're going to do gangbusters if they have enough to supply to feed that. And I know
Yeah.
that people kind of say, "Oh, the game console makers love it when oh the Switch 2 is selling for I don't know $5,000 on eBay because the hype is that high." But like in reality, what that does is like you lose sales. That's a potential sales down the drain. People get disappointed. It could get people to rethink of like, you know what? I got my Switch. I'll just wait for like a price cut or something. No, I think they want to like capitalize on that and have as much supply on hand as possible. And that's why they would delay that to fall 2025. Okay, tinfoil hats off.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I still think that fall is far too long. I think the time I agree with you. Like a fall, obviously it's great to like have it lined up for holiday. And yes, Nintendo can be very patient. Nintendo knows they don't have to do much of anything, right? Like we talked about when we had the hardware conversation, right? Like they could they could put a Nintendo logo on a potato with wires coming out of it, and as long as it ran like Mario and Zelda, uh you know and Metroid, people would line up and buy it in the millions, right? um I just, with the software timeline and roadmap that we have, I think April makes sense. Like April to May makes sense. You get it out there, you get it in the hands of a bunch of kids just before summertime, right? For road trips, for travel, all that good stuff. And then you also give it some ramp leading into holiday so that you can get your software titles in a row in time for Christmas, right? So that it's had a few months to kind of get some traction, and then boom, fall hits. You get some Black Friday, not even deals, right? Because Nintendo doesn't do deals, but you can say, hey, we've got some great titles coming in October, November, December, so that by the time Christmas comes around, there's a fever pitch and this, high demand for the Switch 2, and also potentially making the case for people to convert from their previous Switches to the Switch 2 by then. So I still, obviously I've conceded in its reality that it's coming in 2025. I still think it's going to be earlier rather than late, April or May. I'm putting a flag in the ground on this. But if your tingles, and that sounds super weird, but if your tingles are correct, then then
Courtesy of Tingle himself, by the way.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. But anyways, we'll see. We'll see how accurate Tingle is on this. I'm still thinking April or May. Makes sense to me. Okay. Next up, Silent Hill 2 remake is changing people's minds. This is from Giovanni Colantonio at Digital Trends, titled I was a Silent Hill 2 remake skeptic until I played its first 3 hours." When Konami first announced that it was remaking the horror classic Silent Hill 2, I was an immediate skeptic. The original game is one of those wholly unique creative visions that just felt impossible to replicate. How could a studio intentionally capture the stilted voice acting or jerky animations of the original aesthetic decisions that gave that game an off-kilter unease that made it so special? I especially had reservations about the Medium developer Blooper Team taking up that risk, as it's a studio whose games have occasionally felt like they were trying a bit too hard to recreate an atmosphere born from PS2 era tech limitations. After playing the first 3 hours of Bloober's take on Silent Hill 2, my fears have melted away. It's immediately clear that the studio understood the difficult assignment ahead of it. The remake kept a firm handle on the visceral eeriness of one of the horror genre's greatest games, all while expanding it in ways that are careful not to trounce on its signature mystique. While it's sure to be divisive no matter what, the naysayers may be in for one heck of a surprise in October. My lengthy demo covers a lot of ground from the very opening scene through some puzzling in the unnerving Blue Creek apartments complex. The similarities and differences are immediately clear from the first few minutes of that stretch. Its Unreal Engine 5 visual upgrade makes a splash right away as I get more nuance from James Sunderland's tortured little face. It's almost uncanny. When I make my way to the town cemetery and meet Angela, an iconic sequence from the original, it's almost otherworldly. These hyper detailed characters stand out in front of the cloud like fog that billows behind them like they're floating in another universe. I'm not sure what to make of it at first, but I'm slowly sold on it the deeper I get into the story. What makes those moments work is the remake's new voice cast. Bloober Team worked with an experienced team of professional actors here, which is a notable difference from the hauntingly wooden performances of the original game. I worried that this approach could drive the script into overacted melodrama that's lacking its weird edge, but that's not the case. The cast is just intentionally stilted enough to make everything feel off center. In an interview with Digital Trends, lead producer Maciej Glom explained how, I apologize if said that incorrectly, explained how Bloober approached the tricky task of recreating the original's eerily unusual performances. We understood that the off kilter feeling was a big part of the original, but at the same time, we wanted to flesh out the emotions of the characters much more. Using professional actors allowed us to go much deeper into the psychology of those characters and create those arcs of their specific detail of their emotions changing throughout the game. Recreating that feeling with the new actors wouldn't be impossible, but it'd be very hard to do it in a good way and not feel weird. You'll never get the same feeling unless you use the same voiceovers, which wasn't possible with the flow of the game. The article goes on for quite a bit and really details the demo here, but long and short of it is it's looking great. I think the initial trailers for it, right, there was definitely some skepticism, and there were people who were worried that, similar to what what the article was referencing, that the studio would not do it justice, but that that doesn't seem to be the case, which is good, which is refreshing, right? So what do you think, Alan? Are you glad to hear that this it seems to be turning a corner?
Yeah, it's really cool. Like, even though I'm not like a big Silent Hill 2 fan, like I could still kind of tell that like they weren't quite landing it with their trailers and the reveals and everything they were showing. So I think it was just a kind of a marketing misstep, which I think is proven out by people's actual hands-on impressions, and even the trailer that they put out today on the PlayStation blog. Like I was like, "Yo, this looks way better," and something that I would actually want to play, especially because I think it's coming out roughly around Halloween time, which is like awesome. I'm really glad that they understood the assignment of putting out a horror game near Halloween. And yeah, so it is good to see this beloved franchise that has a really big fan base actually get a good remake.
Yes, for sure. And I don't know if it will be as legendary as the Resident Evil 4 remake, but you know, it almost feels like this is an even um, higher threshold to clear, right? Because of the uniqueness of Silent Hill 2, because of the stilted voice acting and the very unique and weird atmosphere. Like, how do you purposefully remake that unique experience without making it feel forced or awkward? So
Yeah, and with
um
Silent Hill 2 is always more niche than Resident Evil, I feel like. So like
yeah,
that
yeah,
set of fans is even more particular and more difficult to please than say like the Resident Evil fans. So
yeah,
it could still come out and like be just kind of like, oh, just we're whelmed by this. And
yeah.
it's just kind of okay. But I
Yeah,
mean, it's looking a lot more promising than it did, say, 3, 4 months ago.
yeah, definitely. Good news. Love seeing you love to see it, right? All right, story number 3. Black Myth Wukong arrives today. And there was an odd discourse online. So scores began to come out for it, I think a couple days ago. And the Metacritic currently is sitting at 82. IGN gave it an 8 out of 10. And generally, it's been receiving positive reviews. But this discourse picked up online that 82 is like bad, like that 8 is a bad score. And so, it really kind of got me wondering, like, you know, in our current age, right, of scoring video games and game fans who have certain allegiances to particular studios or the console wars or whatever, like, how did we get here? What are we doing here if we think that 82 is a bad score, right? Like, I guess, Alan, what do you think, like, what's the number out of 100 or out of 10, whatever you prefer, like, where's the number where you're like, okay, that's a bad game, that's not worth my time? What's that number for you?
So once you start dipping to like 60 and below, like I would really question it unless it were a property that like, oh, maybe I'm really into comic books and it's a Marvel type title and it's a bit clunky and it's got some questionable bugs, but you know what? If you're a massive fan, like you're just really gonna have a fun time in that existing in that world of those characters, and then it'd be worth it. But for me, that's kind of where I'm like, if once I hit 60, I'm very like, okay, I don't know if I need to play this at all.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with you. I would say, like, like literally 6D or less, like at that number or less, I'm probably I'm probably not going to look at it, unless it is that sort of like niche game. But that being said, there are plenty of amazing experiences that live in the realm of 75, 80,
Swimming in sevens,
85, swimming in
Michael
sevens.
Coover,
I
easy
mean,
easy allies, swimming in sevens.
I mean, and that's you know, and it's funny because I actually referenced that whole swimming in sevens discourse, right? Like I I feel really strongly actually that this kind of shift to only accepting like 9 or above came after Starfield. Um like, Starfield had such hype, right, around it. There was such an expectation from Bethesda for this game, and when it came out and was swimming in sevens, like, was solidly in the 70s territory, and low 80s in some cases, right? Um, this it was universally sort of acknowledged as bad, right? But it wasn't bad. It just didn't meet the freaking, Shasta, height, bar that was set for it. And so I think that resulted in a lot of bitterness, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, and just generally like 72 garbage, like, or whatever, like this idea that these scores were bad. Um, I mean, I'm sure there are other people who are going to be like, "Oh no, it happened way before Starfield," but I do think that's a much more like immediate example of this phenomenon, and may partially be driving this idea of like, okay, Black Myth Wukong, right? Like it's coming from an independent developer, right? I think it's Game Science is the name of the developer. It's sort of in the same space as like Stellar Blade, Lies of P, this sort of Souls inspired action game uh, that looks great, sounds like it plays great. Um, and so people are having a lot of expectation for it and hoping that it comes out really well, and then it gets reviewed pretty well, like again in the eights, but then they're like, no, this is bad. So yeah, I don't know, it was really fascinating to me, being in
I
with
think in
this.
this particular case too, it had a lot of weirdo culture war elements kind of blended into it too because of some of the statements made by one of its creators. And I think then it ends up getting wrapped up into, well, this thing represents me, so if it didn't get a 9 or above, it's in affront to my very existence, which is again the opposite of just be cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
And I think that that's very specific to this because yeah, an 82 is a great score for a first time big AAA effort from a game dev team coming from a part of the world that doesn't really churn out AAA titles. That's a great first game. I would say hey, good job. I think you probably did what you set out to do. And again, I think it is just sort of people getting way too wrapped up in this game all of a sudden becomes who they are. And so
right,
anything below what, God of War or Elden Ring gets is, a massive slight to them personally.
yeah, exactly. um Yeah, I would agree. I think, there, and that was another article that I had pulled out here. The the Black Myth Wukong no feminist propaganda, no COVID-19 discussion email is real. And this is from Paul Tassi over at Forbes.com. It says a reported document regarding coverage for the upcoming Black Myth Wukong has been floating around the internet, making very strange demands from creators in order to receive a code. It seemed almost too absurd to be true, but I have been able to confirm with a US based creator that I trust that it is in fact legitimate. A Google document attached to the email said the following about coverage: do enjoy the game. Don't insult other influencers or players. Use any offensive language or humor. Include politics, violence, nudity, feminist propaganda, fetishization, and other content that instigates negative discourse. Do not use trigger words such as quarantine, isolation, or COVID-19, and do not discuss content related to China's game industry, policies, opinions, news, etc. Um, the email was not sent to journalists, as some of them have said it's fake based on that, but it was for creators only. These guidelines may not have also made it to all creators or were sent out merely from requests for codes from these creators. There's no NDA required to accept the code. Um, there were some oddities about the Google document pointed out before, including a Gmail address that created it. But, it sounds like Paul Tassi has since validated that this is all accurate. Um, and the standout phrase feminist propaganda may have made its way in there due to reporting that indicated Wukong studio had a quote history of sexism end quote in a widely distributed story, and they did not want that discussed, presuming they think that is what feminist propaganda entails. This could also include a topic like, did they make the female characters too sexualized or something of that nature? Which of course was abounds in Stellar Blade. We don't have to think back too far to recall the ridiculous discourse around what was or was not censored when that game came to market. So yeah, I mean, the actual score of the game aside, there's definitely some weird stuff happening with the studio, and that's totally fair. But I will say again, Lies of P, which is a superb game, like amazing game, probably the best Souls like ever made from a non FromSoft company, has an 80 on Metacritic. So just keep that in mind, folks. Like, there are plenty of amazing games out there. They're not all going to be 90 plus. I think the top rated games of all time on Metacritic are like 94. Um, and so it's okay if your game that you were really looking forward to gets an 80 or an 82 or an 84. You're okay. We'll be okay. Okay. Last story. Final Fantasy 16. Speaking of games that got low scores and made people upset, Final Fantasy 16 PC port officially announced with September release date and a demo. I mean, it was all but confirmed. This is by Taylor Lyles and Michael Cripe, pulling double duty over at IGN.com. PC gamers, your wait will be over soon, as Square Enix has officially announced that Final Fantasy 16 is headed to PC on September 17th, 2024. Announced ahead of tomorrow's Gamescom opening night live presentation, the publisher confirmed that the PC port is on its way and will cost $49.99. Final Fantasy XVI's two DLC expansions, Echoes of the Fallen and The Rising Tide, are launching simultaneously on PC too, but you'll need to pay extra if you want to play them. Whether it's unclear if the story add-ons can be purchased individually, Square Enix is offering a, quote, complete edition, end quote, of the game for $69.99 that comes with the base experience, both DLC expansions, and some miscellaneous in-game items. Additionally, Square Enix has confirmed that a demo is available on Steam and the Epic Game Store now, with any progress made in the demo carrying over to the full build. God, I love that. Final Fantasy 16 was released in 2023 exclusively for the PS5. Last September, Square Enix confirmed that a Final Fantasy 16 PC port was in the works, which came to the surprise of many, as Final Fantasy 16 producer Naoki Yoshida previously shut down the possibility of coming into PC. Fun fact, I once spilled a tray of desserts on Naoki Yoshida at a Final Fantasy event.
Oh no.
I'm sorry, Naoki Yoshida. I apologize. Noting players should go buy a PS5 if they wanted to play it. Based. In March, during an interview with Game Informer, Yoshida revealed that the PC port of Final Fantasy 16 was in the final stages of optimization and hinted that the system requirements to run the game would be, quote, somewhat high, end quote. In our review of Final Fantasy 16, IGN wrote, featuring fast, reflex-driven, action-heavy combat, Final Fantasy 16 is certainly a departure from what fans may expect out of a Final Fantasy game, but its excellent story, characters, and world building are up there with some of the best the series has to offer, and the innovative active time lore feature should set a new standard for how lengthy, story-heavy games keep players invested in its world. Yeah, I love the active time lore. It's so good. So Final Fantasy 16 PC port. Alan, thoughts?
Yeah, so it's nice to finally see it come out, because I don't think it was a secret that it was coming out, right? Like, it was pretty well known that it was
No,
a thing
no,
that
it's
was
just
going to happen.
it's finally here. That's all. We're PC players can rejoice, and also it's interesting. I saw a few other places people talking about the pricing. So they were kind of surprised that it was only coming out at 50. They were halfway expecting Square to like release it at 60 or 70, right? But yeah, $50 to get the base game. Not bad.
No, that's great. It's great for PC gamers, and I think hopefully it'll help Square kind of recoup some of the costs. I think they were a little bit disappointed in the sales on when it was PS5 exclusive only. Um, Although I am curious to see like what the specs are for the requirements, because as you know, my PS5 died on me. But I do have like an okay PC that maybe I can play it on it. It just depending on what the requirements are. Although it seems like it might be like a pretty heavy game.
Yeah.
So we'll see about that. Although I also did hear that like potentially super rumor that it could also be announced on for the Xbox Series as well, like alongside.
What?
So again, super
What?
rumor. I have no idea. It could be either gonna go PC first and then later on Xbox, but it could make its way to Xbox too. So
Shun the non-believer. No, I was kidding. That'd be cool. Cool. Well, that does it for our major stories today, and I don't think we got any deals lined up in the chamber today. So until next time, I'm Jeremy.
I'm Alan.
Keep gaming, everybody.
See ya.